Spectrum USA, and then I just started talking about how there's so many different types of autism that it can be rather confusing. Like you have someone like Jennifer Cook-O'Toole, as I said already, who has 3 kids, is pretty good at relationships and very functional, and then you have someone like Saborn on the programme who's who's a bit more socially naive and needs lots of help socially. And I just was saying how the gap between someone like Jennifer and them is so big that you sort of feel there should be subtypes between these different groups. I do think that. Okay, the other thing that did annoy me a little bit, and I do feel this sometimes is a neurodiversity angle. I'm not too sure what Jennifer Cook-O'Toole's views on neurodiversity movement are, but I know she's written quite a few books that seem to imply she probably does support neurodiversity, the neurodiversity model. But she said to Abigail that, because Abigail was quite surprised that she was autistic and had 3 kids, and what's her name? Jennifer said to Abigail, she said, you could do anything, just because you're autistic doesn't mean you can't have kids, sort of thing. It's got nothing to do with autism, you could do anything. And I sort of feel this is a line that some people in the neurodiversity movement come out with, in particular, that I find quite irritating, because I just feel that that's not the case. Because they seem to think that just because they can do it, all other autistic people can do it. And for some autistic people, they will never be able to have kids, even if they wanted to, because their autism means that they find relationships so difficult, and that is genuinely because of their autism. It's got nothing, it's to do with their autism, essentially. It's like, I've been to university, although I stayed at home, I couldn't manage halls, but I'm not going to say to another autistic person that they can go to university too, because they might be able to, but some people with autism won't be able to go to university, even if they have loads of parental support like I did. They won't be able to go to university because their autism means that's not possible for them. So I'm not going to say that just because you're autistic you can go to university. And some autistics will never be able to have proper. I mean, obviously, you can't really say never, ever, ever, because obviously, it's not as simple as that. Like, people do develop and people do change. So you can't really say they're never going to be able to do that. But for some autistics, it's going to be, put it this way, it's going to be exceedingly difficult, at least to have a conventional relationship. And saying that is not being pessimistic, it's being realistic. And just because another autistic person, you might have a different type of autism, and this is why I do feel we need subtypes, and their brain is probably different, let's face it, their brain must be different if they can handle social skills easier, then there needs to be different subtypes, because it kind of takes a mickey if they're lumping it all together, and then you have some people who are really able, assuming that other autistics can do what they can do when they don't even have the same type of autism as them. So that annoyed me. But other than that comment from Jennifer Cook-O'Toole, I thought it was a good programme, and I do recommend it. It's on Netflix if you want to watch it. And they did show quite a range of different types of sort of different manifestations, I should say, which was quite good. They didn't just show the uber able ones, they did show a sort of range, which was quite good. Oh yeah, and the other thing, so moving on to another thing that I'm trying to get sorted at the moment, I'm trying to get sorted a fourth COVID vaccination for myself in the autumn, because I've been speaking to a psychologist who I speak to every week, and she said that because I have mental vulnerabilities essentially, because of my severe OCD and not being able to handle illness, and basically the extreme limitations that COVID is putting on my life, and the only way I can move forward is with vaccination. Even then it's going to be difficult, but obviously it makes it possible, and it makes it it makes it more achievable. Obviously without having vaccination it's just not possible at all. She said that in her eyes I'm definitely eligible for when I do the for autumn rollout. So I got in contact with the head of vaccination who helped me who arranged a home visit for me for the last 3, and she said again that I should be eligible because people with severe mental problems, like she mentioned bipolar and psychosis and other things, are going to be included in the rollout in autumn. So obviously if you've got like severe OCD like germ phobia like I have and autism along with it, that makes it very essentially makes me mentally vulnerable. Then she said, I will be eligible, but I need to get which is good. I was worried that, she'd come back and say no, but she was actually really supportive. But she said, I need to get the GP to give it a go-ahead. Everything's got to go through the GP, annoyingly. So, it's just like to rubber stamp it, and it should just be a formality. So my dad has hand-delivered a letter to the GP just saying, why I need to be included, and if need be, the psychologist will write a letter, but hopefully the GP will just rubber stamp it anyway because he's aware of all my issues anyway. He did put me on the learning disability register, and that's because, by the way, although I don't have a learning disability in the technical sense, because obviously like my verbal IQ is very high, my non-verbal IQ, that's my performance IQ, is basically in the learning disabled range. So basically some of my functioning is similar to someone with a mild learning disability in terms of like my adaptive skills and practical skills and the amount of support I need with like things like shopping and I don't know, things like that basically in adulting. Some of the non-verbal, because my non-verbal IQ is so severely delayed, basically, or severely, it's like extremely low. The psychologist was quite surprised when I had that cognitive assessment, by the way. She was like, she hadn't really seen such a gulf before, because like people do have splits between their IQ, and particularly if you're autistic, that's quite common. But to have such a gulf, whereby part of my IQ is on the first percentile, which basically means that the vast majority of the population have an IQ, that's my non-verbal IQ, is like really, 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 really low, and that explains a lot. And that probably, that reflects my executive functioning problems and also my social difficulties, essentially. Even though I can speak extremely well, and I've got really good verbal abilities and logical and reasoning skills. So because my verbal IQ is in the top 1% of the population, so figure that one out. So basically, it's not, my brain isn't connected. So that's why the doctor did put me on the register, just because, because that was quite helpful having that cognitive assessment actually. But he put me on the register, which is quite good, because there should be an equivalent autism register, because all it means is I'll get extra time, like say if I need a doctor's appointment